The faint blue glow of computer screens illuminated Dr. Park Ji-ho's face as he sat alone in the control room of South Korea's SETI facility. The midnight shift was usually quiet, filled with routine scans and data analysis. But tonight was different. His hands trembled as he adjusted his glasses, leaning closer to examine the strange patterns dancing across his monitor. The signal started as a tiny anomaly, just a blip in the usual cosmic background noise. But as he refined the tracking algorithms, the data revealed something that made his blood run cold. The computer was detecting multiple massive objects moving in perfect formation, all accelerating toward the inner solar system. Dr. Park ran his standard checks again, certain he must have made a mistake. He'd seen false positives before: space debris, comets, even satellite interference. But the more he analyzed the data, the clearer the picture became. These objects were artificial, powered by technology far beyond anything humans had created. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up additional sensor readings. The object's speed was increasing at a rate that defied the known laws of physics. They had already passed Pluto's orbit and showed no signs of slowing down. With shaking hands, he reached for his phone and dialed the emergency contact number for Director Kim Da-won at the Space Defense Initiative. The phone rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. "Director Kim, I apologize for calling so late, but you need to see this right away," Dr. Park said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've detected multiple objects approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. They're massive, and they're accelerating in a way that's impossible for natural objects." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you certain about this, Dr. Park? Have you run all the standard verification protocols?" "Yes, sir. 3 times. The data is clear. These are artificial structures, each one larger than anything humanity has ever built, and they're heading straight for Earth." Director Kim's voice sharpened, sleep forgotten. "Send me everything you have. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Security Council." Within an hour, the quiet SETI facility transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Scientists and military personnel poured in, their faces grave as they reviewed Dr. Park's findings. Satellite dishes worldwide redirected their focus to the approaching objects, confirming his discoveries with frightening clarity. At major observatories across the globe, astronomers abandoned their scheduled observations to track the incoming fleet. The Very Large Array in New Mexico captured detailed radio emissions from the objects, revealing complex energy signatures that pulsed in synchronized patterns. The European Southern Observatory's telescopes in Chile recorded visual confirmation: massive shapes moving against the starfield, their metallic surfaces reflecting sunlight. Dr. Park worked without rest, coordinating with international teams as they gathered more data. The objects maintained perfect formation despite traveling at speeds that should have made such precision impossible. Their trajectory was unmistakable. They were on an intercept course with Earth. As dawn broke over South Korea, Director Kim called an emergency press conference. The world's media gathered, sensing something unprecedented was about to be announced. Dr. Park stood off to the side of the stage, his research data ready to display on the massive screens behind the podium. Director Kim stepped up to the microphone, his face grave. "Citizens of Earth, approximately 6 hours ago, our scientific facilities detected multiple artificial objects approaching our solar system. These objects are clearly vessels of some kind, created by an intelligence far more advanced than our own. Their current trajectory and velocity indicate they will reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours. The room erupted in chaos as reporters shouted questions. Dr. Park watched as decades of protocols for first contact scenarios crumbled in the face of reality. This wasn't going to be a peaceful exchange of knowledge and culture. The aggressive approach vector and military formation of the vessels made their intentions clear. Military satellites repositioned to track the fleet, revealing more details about their size and composition. Each ship was roughly the size of Manhattan, with smaller vessels swarming around them like insects around a hive. Their hulls seemed to absorb radar signals, making detailed scans difficult, but the sheer scale of the armada was undeniable. As the world's governments scrambled to respond, Dr. Park noticed something odd in the data. The fleet's energy signatures showed subtle fluctuations that seemed to ripple through all vessels simultaneously, as if they were somehow connected. He began isolating these patterns, sensing they might be important, though he couldn't yet understand why. The first transmission arrived 18 hours after the initial detection. It came as a burst of data that overrode every digital display on Earth simultaneously. The message was brief and left no room for misinterpretation. Your world now belongs to the Empire. Prepare for integration or face extinction. Dr. Park watched the fear spread across the globe as the message repeated in every human language. But his scientific mind was already at work, analyzing the transmission method, looking for clues about the technology behind it. The aliens might be advanced, but they weren't gods. They were beings who used technology that could be understood and perhaps countered. As the first day of first contact drew to a close, Dr. Park gathered his findings and headed to an emergency meeting with Earth's top scientists and military leaders. The aliens had made their intentions clear, but humanity wasn't going to surrender without understanding every possibility for resistance. The objects approaching Earth might be warships, but every weapon had a weakness. They just had to find it. In the darkened conference room, Dr. Park prepared to share his observations about the fleet's energy patterns. Perhaps in those mysterious fluctuations lay the key to humanity's survival. The Earth had 72 hours to find a way to fight back against an enemy that had already declared victory. In the basement laboratory of Seoul National University, Lee Soo-jin hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her desk was cluttered with empty coffee cups and scattered papers covered in complex equations. The quantum physics lab, usually pristine and organized, now looked like a war room. Captain Han Ta-woo watched as she ran another simulation on the supercomputer. His cyber warfare expertise seemed almost primitive compared to the mathematics Soo-jin was working with. The captain had been assigned to assist her research after the alien fleet's approach was detected, but he often felt more like a student than a collaborator. "Look at this pattern," Soo-jin said, pointing to a complex wave formation on her screen. "Every ship in their fleet produces identical quantum signatures. Not similar, identical. That should be impossible." The captain leaned closer, his military training helping him spot the tactical implications. Could they be using some kind of synchronized system? Soo-jin nodded excitedly. "Better than that. I think their entire fleet is quantum entangled. Each ship's navigation system is linked at the subatomic level. It's brilliant engineering, but it's also incredibly risky." Their breakthrough came after analyzing data from observatories worldwide. The alien ships moved with impossible precision, changing direction, as if they were a single organism rather than thousands of individual vessels. Soo-jin had recognized the pattern from her own research into quantum computing. The emergency UN session was called as the alien fleet passed Mars orbit. Soo-jin found herself addressing world leaders from a hastily prepared podium, her research notes trembling in her hands. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, their faces showing a mix of fear and desperate hope. "The alien fleet uses quantum entanglement for navigation," she explained, keeping her language as simple as possible. "Think of it like a web connecting all their ships. When one moves, they all know instantly where to go. It's why their formations are so perfect." Captain Han stepped forward to help with the military implications. "This technology gives them incredible coordination, but it also means they're all dependent on the same system. If we can disrupt the quantum field they're using, we might be able to affect their entire fleet at once." The UN chamber erupted in questions and discussions. Meanwhile, Commander Choi Min-ji was already working to coordinate Earth's military resources. Every nation's armed forces needed to be ready if Soo-jin's theory proved correct. The Stellar Empire opened diplomatic channels as their fleet approached, but their messages dripped with condescension. Their ambassador, appearing as a hologram in the UN chamber, spoke as if addressing children. "Your world is primitive," the alien representative declared. "Integration into the Empire will elevate your species. Resistance would be both futile and unnecessary." Commander Choi watched these interactions carefully, noting how the aliens dismissed every question about their technology. Their arrogance was telling. They weren't just confident, they were complacent. They hadn't faced a serious military challenge in thousands of years. Back in the laboratory, Su Jin and Captain Han worked tirelessly to understand the quantum entanglement system. They had to be certain of their theory before Earth committed to any action. One mistake could mean the end of human civilization. "The math is solid," Su Jin said, reviewing her calculations for the 100th time. "Their quantum field has to maintain perfect coherence. Even a small disruption could cascade through their entire system." Captain Han gathered military satellite data, planning how they might generate the disruption field they needed. "We'll need to coordinate every satellite and ground-based transmitter on Earth. Has anything like this ever been attempted?" Su Jin shook her head. "Not even close. We're going to rewrite the laws of physics as we know them. Either it works or—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew the stakes. Commander Choi organized daily briefings as the plan developed. Military leaders from around the world gathered to hear updates on the quantum disruption strategy. Some were skeptical, but no one had a better plan to offer. The aliens continued their diplomatic overtures, each message more condescending than the last. They spoke of Earth as if it were a small village they planned to modernize, never considering that humans might have advanced in ways they hadn't anticipated. Su Jin's team expanded as quantum physicists from around the world joined the effort. They worked in shifts, refining the disruption theory and running increasingly complex simulations. The science was revolutionary. In any other circumstance, it would have been worth multiple Nobel Prizes. Captain Han coordinated with global military forces, preparing them for what would happen if the plan succeeded. The alien ships would be vulnerable, but only for a short time. Earth would need to strike fast and hard when the moment came. As the alien fleet entered the final approach to Earth, Su Jin made a last check of her calculations. The quantum disruption would have to be precisely timed and perfectly executed. There would be no second chances. She looked at Captain Han and Commander Choi, seeing the same mix of determination and anxiety she felt. Humanity had come together in ways she never thought possible, united by the need to survive. The next few hours would determine the fate of their species, but for the first time since the alien fleet was detected, Su Jin felt something close to hope. They had found the Empire's weakness. Now they just had to be brave enough and smart enough to exploit it. 300 meters beneath the streets of Seoul, in a Cold War-era bunker converted into a high-tech research facility, Lee Soo-jin stared at the holographic display floating above the central platform. The three-dimensional model showed thousands of alien ships, each one connected to the others by glowing lines representing quantum linkages. The air in the underground facility was cool and dry, filled with the hum of powerful computers and the quiet voices of scientists working around the clock. Team members dozed on cots in the corners when exhaustion overtook them, only to wake and return to their stations after a few hours of rest. "Look at this," Soo-jin said, manipulating the display to zoom in on a particular section of the fleet. Captain Han stepped closer, his uniform wrinkled from days of continuous wear. "The quantum connections aren't just a communication system. Each ship's navigational computer is completely dependent on the others." She pointed to the web of connections. "It's like a neural network. Every ship receives positioning data from every other ship simultaneously. That's how they maintain such perfect formation, even at faster-than-light speeds." Dr. Park's voice came through the communication system, his image appearing on one of the wall screens. "We're detecting increased activity in the fleet. They're beginning to spread out into attack formation." Soo-jin nodded, her fingers dancing through the hologram to adjust the simulation parameters. The team had been working on a way to disrupt the quantum field, but they needed to understand exactly how the system worked before they could effectively counter it. In another section of the facility, engineers were modifying satellite control systems to generate the quantum interference they would need. The work was delicate. One wrong calculation could render their efforts useless. The frequency has to be exact, Su-Jin explained to the gathered team leaders. Too low, and it won't affect their systems. Too high, and their safety protocols will filter it out. We need to match their quantum resonance perfectly. Captain Han studied the data scrolling across his tablet. How long will the disruption last once we initiate it? Minutes at most. Their systems will try to reestablish quantum coherence immediately. Whatever we do, we have to do it fast. Above ground, the Empire's demands were becoming increasingly harsh. Their latest transmission had given Earth 48 hours to begin dismantling all military installations. They wanted humanity defenseless when they arrived. Dr. Park's team continued tracking the fleet's movements, sending regular updates to the underground facility. Each new piece of data helped refine their understanding of the alien technology. The Empire's ships were marvels of engineering, but their reliance on quantum entanglement was absolute. Su-Jin worked through another set of calculations, her eyes burning from staring at screens for too long. The solution was there, just beyond her grasp. The quantum field that connected the alien ships was incredibly complex, but like all systems, it had to follow certain physical laws. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she said suddenly, straightening up from her workstation. "We've been trying to break their quantum connections, but what if we strengthen them instead?" Captain Han looked confused. "Wouldn't that just make their systems more effective?" "Not necessarily." Su-Jin pulled up a new simulation. "Think of it like a rope. A loose rope can handle a lot of stress. But if you pull it too tight..." Understanding dawned on the captain's face. "It snaps." The team shifted their focus, working on ways to amplify the quantum entanglement rather than disrupt it. The math was counterintuitive, but the simulations showed promise. By strengthening the quantum connections beyond their design tolerance, they might be able to cause a catastrophic failure. Dr. Park's voice came through again, more urgent this time. "The fleet's accelerating. New estimated arrival time is 36 hours. Su-Jin felt the pressure mounting. The vast underground facility suddenly seemed smaller, more confined. Everything humanity had built, everything they had achieved, depended on solving this puzzle in time. The engineers reported progress with the satellite modifications. Earth's combined technological resources were being repurposed for a single purpose, generating the most powerful quantum field ever created by humans. "The timing will be critical," Su-Jin told the command staff. "We'll only get one chance at this. If the field strength isn't perfect, if the frequency isn't exact, the Empire's ships will adapt and our opportunity will be lost." Captain Han organized military forces worldwide, preparing them for the moment when the alien fleet would be vulnerable. Every missile, every fighter, every weapon humanity possessed would need to strike in a coordinated attack. As the hours counted down, Su-Jin refined the final calculations. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, but she pushed through her exhaustion. The equations were beautiful in their complexity, describing the interaction of quantum fields on a scale never before attempted. Dr. Park's monitoring stations tracked the Empire's fleet as it passed the moon's orbit. Soon the ships would be close enough to see with the naked eye, a new constellation of artificial stars bringing either humanity's end or its greatest victory. In the underground facility, Su-Jin and her team made their final preparations. The quantum amplification field was ready. The satellites were in position. Now they just had to wait for the perfect moment to spring their trap. The Empire had no idea what was coming. Their arrogance, their absolute faith in their technology, had blinded them to its fundamental weakness. They had created a perfect system, but perfection could be turned against itself. Humanity's survival would depend on the next few hours. But in the depths beneath Seoul, Earth's defenders worked with quiet determination, preparing to turn the Empire's greatest strength into its ultimate weakness. Commander Choi stood before the giant display screen in the Global Defense Command Center, her posture perfect despite her exhaustion. The Grand Marshal's hologram towered above her, his silver-scaled features twisted in what appeared to be boredom. "Your submission is noted," the Grand Marshal said, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. "Though I must admit, I expected more resistance from a species that has survived this long." Choi bowed slightly, playing her role perfectly. "We recognize the Empire's superior strength and wisdom. Earth will comply with all integration protocols." Behind her practiced submission, Choi's mind raced through the final preparations. Military forces worldwide were quietly moving into position, disguised as evacuation efforts. Every nation had committed their resources to Operation Sunburst, even those who had been enemies mere weeks ago. Deep beneath the city, Su Jin and Captain Han watched the exchange on their monitors while making final adjustments to the quantum disruption device. The technology was cobbled together from modified satellites, experimental quantum computers, and repurposed communication arrays. "The targeting system is ready," Captain Han reported, his fingers moving across multiple keyboards. "All satellites are in position and awaiting final calibration." Su Jin nodded, checking the quantum field calculations one last time. They had positioned their modified satellites in a sphere around Earth, creating what would appear to the Empire as a defensive grid. In reality, each satellite was part of their quantum amplification web. The Grand Marshal's next transmission arrived right on schedule. "Your orbital defenses are primitive, but must be dismantled immediately. The Empire will not tolerate any military installations during integration." Commander Choi's response was perfectly measured. "Of course, Grand Marshal. We are preparing to power down our satellite network. Please allow us 12 hours to safely deorbit the units." Those 12 hours were crucial. Su Jin's team needed that time to make final adjustments to the quantum field generators. One miscalculation could alert the Empire to their true intentions. In military bases worldwide, pilots sat in their fighters, waiting. Ground forces manned their positions, disguised as evacuation centers. Submarine crews maintained absolute silence in the depths. Everything depended on maintaining the illusion of submission until the last possible moment. Captain Han coordinated with global cyber warfare teams, ensuring their systems were protected from Imperial scanning. The aliens' arrogance worked in their favor. They weren't looking closely at Earth's technology, assuming it was too primitive to pose any threat. "Power levels are optimal," Su Jin announced, reviewing the latest tests. "The quantum field will reach maximum amplitude exactly 8 minutes after activation. Those 8 minutes would determine the fate of humanity. The Empire's ships had to be in exactly the right position when the field reached full strength. Too early or too late, and they would simply damage a few ships rather than disabling the entire fleet." Commander Choi continued her diplomatic performance, accepting each new demand from the Empire with apparent humility. The Grand Marshal spoke of Earth's rehabilitation and the benefits of Imperial guidance, while his fleet moved into position around the planet. "Look at their formation," Captain Han said, pointing to the tactical display. "They're spreading out to cover every major population center, just like we predicted." Su Jin studied the pattern of Imperial ships. Their quantum-linked navigation made them move like a single organism, spreading across Earth's sky in a perfect geometric pattern. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. The final hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. Every member of the defense force knew their role. The plan was as simple as it was desperate. When the quantum disruption field reached maximum strength, all of Earth's military forces would strike simultaneously at the disabled Imperial ships. 6 hours to fleet deployment completion, the Grand Marshal announced. "Prepare your population for preliminary genetic evaluation. Imperial standards must be maintained." Commander Choi felt her jaw clench, but maintained her diplomatic smile. "We look forward to meeting Imperial standards, Grand Marshal. Earth is honored by your attention to our development." In the underground facility, Su Jin and Captain Han ran their final system checks. The quantum field generators were operating perfectly, each satellite reporting optimal power levels. Now they just needed the Empire's ships to complete their deployment. All units confirm ready status, Captain Hand reported, his voice tight with tension. Ground forces are in position. Air units are fueled and armed. Naval forces are at designated coordinates. Su Jin looked at the complex web of quantum calculations floating in the holographic display. Everything they knew about physics, everything they had learned about the Empire's technology, had led to this moment. Commander Choi watched as the Imperial fleet completed its positioning. Thousands of massive ships hung in Earth's sky, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They were visible even in daylight now, a constant reminder of humanity's precarious situation. 1 hour to final deployment, the Grand Marshal declared. Your cooperation will be noted in the Imperial records. Perhaps your species has wisdom after all. In the depths beneath the city, Su Jin initiated the quantum field generator's startup sequence. There would be no going back now. Either their plan would work, or humanity would face the consequences of their attempted resistance. The countdown had begun. In less than an hour, they would find out if humanity's greatest gamble would pay off, or if they had just signed their own extinction order. Captain Han looked at the final readouts, and then at Su Jin. Whatever happens, we gave it everything we had. Su Jin nodded, her eyes fixed on the quantum field calculations. The numbers were perfect. The theory was sound. Now they just needed the courage to act when the moment came. Above them, the Empire's fleet continued its careful deployment, unaware that their greatest advantage was about to become their downfall. The tension in the underground command center was thick enough to cut with a knife. Su Jin's fingers hovered over the activation controls while Captain Han counted down the final seconds. Around them, dozens of scientists and military personnel held their breath. Empire fleet in final position. Dr. Park's voice came through the speakers. All ships have reached their designated coordinates. Commander Choi's image appeared on the main screen, her face calm despite the stakes. All military forces report ready. The moment that field activates, we hit them with everything we have. Su Jin took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the quantum field calculations one last time. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. She pressed the activation sequence. At first, nothing happened. The massive display showing the Imperial fleet remained unchanged, thousands of ships hanging in perfect formation above Earth. The seconds ticked by in complete silence. Captain Han leaned forward, studying the tactical display intently. "Wait, there." He pointed to one of the lead ships. The massive vessel had shifted slightly, barely a few meters off its position, but in the Empire's perfect formation, even that tiny movement was significant. "The quantum field is engaging," Su Jin announced, her fingers flying across the controls. Power levels at 30% and rising. She watched as the readings climbed steadily. Their modified satellites were performing exactly as designed, creating an invisible web of quantum energy around the planet. The first real sign of trouble came from the Empire itself. The Grand Marshal's transmission cut in, his usual arrogance replaced by confusion. "What is this disturbance? Your primitive technology cannot possibly." His image flickered and vanished as more ships began to show signs of disruption. The perfect geometric pattern of the Imperial fleet started to waver, like a reflection in disturbed water. "Power levels at 60%. Su Jin called out, quantum cascade beginning to propagate through their network. She watched in amazement as her theories proved correct. The Empire's quantum-linked navigation system was turning against itself. Captain Han coordinated with military forces worldwide. "All units stand by. Wait for maximum disruption before engaging." The gathered officers watched as more and more Imperial ships lost their precise positioning. On the tactical display, the disruption spread like ripples in a pond. Each affected ship caused disturbances in the quantum field that impacted nearby vessels. The Empire's greatest strength, their interconnected navigation system, was becoming their greatest weakness. "Their quantum field is destabilizing." Su-Jin announced, her eyes fixed on the readings. The numbers were climbing faster now, far beyond their initial projections. The cascade effect is amplifying itself. We're seeing power levels we never predicted. Above Earth, the Imperial fleet's formation completely collapsed. Ships began to drift randomly, their quantum-linked navigation systems feeding them contradictory information. Some vessels tried to compensate, their engines firing erratically, only to make the situation worse. The Grand Marshal's transmission cut in again, breaking up with static. Impossible. You cannot. How did you? Emergency protocols. The signal dissolved into chaos. Power levels at maximum. Su-Jin shouted. The quantum field has reached critical amplitude. She watched in amazement as her instruments recorded the cascade effect sweeping through the entire Imperial fleet. Commander Choi's voice rang out through all command channels. All forces, engage. Strike while they're vulnerable. Earth's combined military forces launched their attack. Fighters streaked into the sky. Missiles rose from hidden silos, and naval vessels emerged from the depths to target the disoriented Imperial ships. In the command center, Su-Jin and Captain Han watched as humanity fought back against their would-be conquerors. The Empire's mighty warships, their systems crippled by the quantum disruption, could not coordinate their defenses. Look at their energy readings, Su-Jin said, pointing to new data flowing across her screen. Their power systems are completely destabilized. They can't even maintain basic ship functions. The quantum cascade had exceeded their most optimistic predictions. Instead of simply disrupting the Empire's navigation, it had created a feedback loop that was overwhelming their entire technological infrastructure. Imperial ships began colliding with each other, unable to maintain safe distances without their quantum-linked systems. Others drifted out of orbit, their engines firing randomly as confused computers tried to compensate for the disruption. The Empire's command structure is breaking down, Captain Han reported, monitoring their communications. They can't coordinate their responses. Each ship is trying to act independently, but they've never operated without the quantum network before. Su-Jin watched as years of theoretical work transformed into reality before her eyes. The quantum disruption field she had helped design was unraveling the most powerful space fleet ever encountered by humanity. Commander Choi's forces pressed their advantage, targeting the largest Imperial vessels first. Without their coordinated defenses, the mighty ships of the Empire proved surprisingly vulnerable to Earth's primitive weapons. In the command center, the tension began to shift to cautious optimism. The impossible was happening. Humanity was winning. Su-Jin's quantum disruption field had given them the opening they needed, and Earth's defenders were making the most of it. The Empire's perfect formation had become a chaotic mess of drifting ships and random energy discharges. Their technology, so far advanced beyond Earth's, had become their undoing. The quantum entanglement that made them unstoppable had become the key to their defeat. As the battle raged above, Su-Jin monitored the quantum field readings, ensuring the disruption remained stable. They had struck a blow against an empire that spanned galaxies, using their own arrogance against them. The moment of truth had arrived, and humanity had risen to meet it. Chaos unfolded in Earth's orbit as the Empire's mighty fleet descended into complete disarray. Massive warships, each the size of a small city, spun helplessly through space. Their quantum navigation systems, once the pride of Imperial technology, now fed them conflicting data that sent them careening into each other. Commander Choi stood at the central command post, watching the tactical displays with intense focus. Launch all fighters. Target their primary vessels first. We won't get another chance like this. Across the globe, humanity's defenders sprang into action. Fighters launched from hidden bases, their pilots executing attack plans they had rehearsed countless times. Missile silos opened, releasing salvos of advanced weapons specifically designed to penetrate Imperial hull armor. In the underground facility, Su-Jin monitored the cascade failure as it spread through the enemy fleet. The quantum disruption is exceeding all our projections, she reported, her voice tight with excitement. Their entire command and control network is collapsing. Captain Han coordinated the global military response, directing forces to exploit gaps in the Empire's now broken formation. Multiple capital ships are completely without power. Their backup systems can't handle the quantum feedback. The Grand Marshal's increasingly desperate transmissions echoed through the command center. This is impossible. All ships, disengage quantum systems. Return to manual control. His orders went unheeded. The Empire's crews had never trained for independent operation. They relied entirely on their quantum-linked systems. High above Earth, the scene was spectacular and terrifying. Imperial ships, their silver hulls gleaming in the sunlight, drifted like dead leaves in a storm. Some fired their engines randomly, trying to stabilize their position, only to make the situation worse. Others went completely dark, their power systems overloaded by the cascade failure. Earth's fighters proved remarkably effective against the disabled Imperial vessels. Without their coordinated defense systems, the massive ships couldn't track the smaller, faster craft. Precision strikes targeted engine sections and weapon emplacements, systematically dismantling the Empire's military might. "We're detecting massive energy fluctuations in their larger ships," Su Jin announced, studying the readings. "The quantum disruption is affecting their power cores. They're becoming unstable." Commander Choi immediately adjusted the attack strategy. All forces maintain safe distance from Imperial capital ships. Target engines only. We don't want those power cores detonating in orbit. The Empire's response became increasingly erratic. Some ships attempted to retreat, but without their quantum navigation, they couldn't calculate faster than light jumps. Others tried to launch fighters of their own, but the small craft were useless without the quantum-linked targeting systems their pilots relied on. In the command center, Captain Han tracked the battle's progress. Enemy casualties mounting. Their formation is completely broken. No signs of coordinated resistance. The Grand Marshal made one final transmission, his hologram distorted and breaking up. "You primitive. How did you? This is not possible. The Empire cannot." His image dissolved into static, never to return. Su Jin's quantum disruption field continued to wreak havoc on Imperial technology. Ships that managed to restore power briefly would quickly fail again, as the cascade effect swept through their systems. The Empire's sophisticated technology had become a liability rather than an advantage. Commander Choi directed the final phase of the counterattack. Earth's forces moved methodically, disabling Imperial vessels with surgical precision. There was no need for desperate measures now. Humanity had gained the upper hand through intelligence rather than brute force. "Multiple Imperial ships are powering down their cores," Captain Han reported. "They're trying to prevent catastrophic failures. We're receiving surrender signals from several vessels." The battle that everyone expected to be Earth's last stand had become a stunning victory. The Empire's mighty armada, which had conquered countless worlds, was being systematically defeated by the very species they had dismissed as primitive. In the underground facility, Su Jin watched as her theoretical work translated into real-world success. The quantum disruption field had exceeded every expectation, turning the Empire's technological sophistication against itself. Commander Choi coordinated with global leaders, ensuring that Earth's response remained unified. There would be no independent negotiations with Imperial survivors. Humanity had fought together, and they would deal with the aftermath together. As the hours passed, the scale of their victory became clear. The Empire's fleet was effectively neutralized, their surviving ships either powered down or drifting helplessly in orbit. Earth's forces maintained their disciplined approach, securing disabled vessels and containing any remaining threats. Captain Han began receiving reports from boarding teams. The Imperial crews, found in their damaged ships, seemed lost without their quantum systems. Generations of reliance on their advanced technology had left them unable to function without it. The cascade failure had done more than just defeat the Empire's fleet. It had shattered their belief in their own superiority. They had never imagined that a primitive world could understand their technology well enough to turn it against them. Sujin's quantum disruption field continued to pulse around Earth, ensuring that no Imperial vessel could restore its systems. The theory she had developed in those desperate days had changed the course of human history. Commander Choi allowed herself a small smile as she watched the final Imperial ship surrender. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious, not through superior firepower, but through intelligence, cooperation, and the courage to strike at the heart of their enemy's strength. The Empire's mighty fleet, which had arrived with such overwhelming confidence, now drifted powerless above the planet they had meant to conquer. The Cascade failure had brought low the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen, defeated by the very people they had come to subjugate. In the months following Earth's victory, scientists from around the world gathered in a new research facility built from a converted Imperial warship. Dr. Park spent countless hours studying the alien databases, translating their records with the help of advanced computers. One quiet evening, as he sorted through ancient technical documents, he discovered something that changed their understanding of the Empire. "Sujin, Captain Han, you need to see this," he called out, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. The massive screens displayed text from what appeared to be a warning message, written in a language far older than the Empire itself. Sujin leaned closer, her eyes widening as she read the translation. "This quantum technology, it wasn't theirs," she said slowly. "They found it, just like we found their ships. And whoever built it originally left clear warnings about its instability." Captain Han studied the ancient text. "Look at these dates. This warning was written thousands of years before the Empire began using the technology. They ignored the dangers completely." As they dug deeper into the Imperial archives, more revelations emerged. Dr. Park discovered records of other civilizations that had attempted to use the quantum instability against the Empire. None had succeeded on Earth's scale, but the attempts proved they weren't alone in their resistance. Commander Choi arrived at the facility to review their findings. The knowledge they were uncovering would shape humanity's future among the stars. "How many other species tried this?" she asked, reviewing the data. "At least 7 documented attempts," Dr. Park replied. "But we succeeded because we understood the quantum principles better than the Empire did. They used the technology without truly comprehending it." The discovery sparked a new era of scientific advancement on Earth. Sujin led a team of quantum physicists studying safer applications of the technology. They learned from the Empire's mistakes, developing systems that weren't dependent on massive quantum networks. Captain Han worked alongside her, ensuring that Earth's new defenses wouldn't share the same vulnerabilities they had exploited. The captured Imperial ships provided templates for humanity's first true space fleet. Commander Choi established the Earth Defense Force, a unified military organization dedicated to protecting their planet from future threats. Representatives from every nation contributed resources and personnel, maintaining the spirit of cooperation that had saved them. As Earth rebuilt and advanced, signals began arriving from across the galaxy. Other species that had lived under Imperial rule were rising up, inspired by humanity's victory. The quantum disruption technique spread, adapted by other civilizations to free themselves. Dr. Park's team made contact with some of these species, establishing Earth's first diplomatic relations beyond their solar system. The connections revealed a galaxy far more diverse and complex than they had imagined. In one of the Imperial databases, they found star charts marking the location of the ancient civilization that had originally developed the quantum technology. Sujin organized an expedition to explore these coordinates, hoping to learn from those who had come before. The Empire's age of dominance had truly ended. Without their quantum advantage, their remaining forces couldn't maintain control over their vast territory. Systems and species that had been subjugated for millennia claimed their independence. Earth emerged as a leader in this new galactic order, not through conquest, but through understanding and cooperation. The same qualities that had allowed humanity to defeat the Empire made them valuable allies to other species. Captain Han oversaw the construction of Earth's first faster-than-light ships, built using a modified version of Imperial technology that avoided the risks of quantum entanglement. Exploration vessels prepared to venture beyond their solar system. Commander Choi worked to establish protocols for peaceful contact with other civilizations. Earth would not repeat the Empire's mistakes. They would approach the galaxy with curiosity and respect, rather than arrogance and force. The scientific discoveries continued as researchers studied the vast archive of Imperial knowledge. Each finding helped humanity better understand their place in the cosmos and the responsibilities that came with their new role. Su Jin's quantum research led to breakthroughs in communication, energy production, and space travel. The technology that had nearly conquered Earth was being transformed into tools for peaceful advancement. Dr. Park's search for other civilizations expanded, using methods that combined human ingenuity with recovered alien technology. The stars that had once seemed distant now beckoned with possibility. As Earth celebrated the first anniversary of their victory, the night sky looked different to those who gazed upward. The stars were no longer just points of light. They were destinations, homes to allies and friends waiting to be discovered. The Empire's fall had created an opportunity for something new, a galaxy where different species could learn from each other, where technology served understanding rather than domination, and where the combined wisdom of many civilizations could light the way forward. The future that lay ahead was uncertain but full of promise. Humanity had proven itself not just in victory, but in how they used that victory to benefit others. The stars had indeed never seemed brighter, and the path to them was wide open.